Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Samuel Kinyanjui. I work at the Aga Khan Foundation as a Partnerships and Communications Officer. I'd like to welcome you to yet another series of the Scale Forum live series. With me today is Mr. Peter Ngunyi. We met today and I found him a very interesting character. And in the 5 minutes discussion that I had with him, I got to learn so much about him, and I think it's like I've known him for a lifetime. So one of the few things that I've got to learn about him in the short time that I've interacted with him is that he uses a very interesting choice of words. He's a visionary and he's an entrepreneur. And that is part of why we're here today. We'd like to learn more about what has driven Peter, what drove Peter into the entrepreneurship space. And we'd also want to hear what are some of the advices, what are some of the challenges, what are some of the opportunities, and why should a young Kenyan go or consider the entrepreneurship route. So welcome once again, Mr. Peter.
Yes.
So if you could just start us off by just basically telling us who Peter Ngunyi is, what Peter Ngunyi has been doing since he left high school.
Yes.
And where does Peter Ngunyi find himself today?
Yes, Asante. Thank you guys for the opportunity. I prefer to talk about before high school. So we just found out that we grew up in the same neighborhood in Kiserian, and anyone who knows that area, it's where the Ngong Hills are. And I grew up as a kid, in places where there were giraffes and hyenas outside, but also it's the place where flights started descending into the Nairobi JKIA airport. And growing up, I was always super pissed off that people are getting to travel all over the world, and I was there almost every day. So after high school, I decided to travel the world. I went to school in the United States. As things progressed on, I started a company there, which I grew to 13 different cities in the US, did some business consulting, and I had really good friends who were starting companies in Kenya, Ushahidi, Brick, the iHub, and I decided that they're doing more interesting stuff in Kenya than I was doing in the United States, so I moved. And when I got to Kenya, president of a company called Brick. Brick is an interesting company. It does connectivity hardware solutions, sold our products in many countries around the world. And after my period at Brick as president, I started doing research on how do you create other companies like that, and that leads me to the company that I started, which is called EarlyBird Venture-Lab, and we do funding interventions and resource interventions. I think we have an incredibly smart group of entrepreneurs. I think if we position them in the right way, we can do some really cool things, and that's from high school, I guess, till here.
Well, you used a really nice choice of words, that you're a resource intervention company or lab.
Yes.
Please just shed more light on what resource intervention means.
Yeah, good question. So we live in an incredible continent. We are 1.2 billion people. We are gonna double to 2.4 in a very short time. Actually by 2100, we will be at 4.4 billion people in Africa. I juice a lot. Hopefully I'll get to be there when 2100 happens. But that means there's a lot of opportunity for business in Africa. But the reality of where we are right now is the average household income in Kenya, for example, is $1,500 a year. And the reality is, if we are in the tech, especially entrepreneurial space, is most people who get seed funding have already spent about $50,000 in their company before they get to seed funding. So if I have two young guys whose families are only making $3,000 a year, it's a difficult path for them to get to the first $50,000. So I think resources for us is two ways: funds, but before funds come people. So we are a firm believer that those two things have to align for us to succeed. So we resource companies in human beings and in money.
So, as a resource interventions company or lab, what kind of social impact is EarlyBird Ventures looking into?
Yes, I think our impact is trying to see more companies started and scaling. And with that, I do believe we will have more people employed. I do believe we will start having more African designed products in the market. I think we will also have more profitable companies. I like that these days that anybody who's in this space is talking about impact, but I'm one of those people who's completely in the field of thought that impact does not come easily, and for-profit companies provide impact the best. So our idea is to try and find companies that are for-profit that are going to bring in a ton of capacity into the ecosystem.
So how would companies, as I said, for-profit companies, how should companies be able, or maybe startups for this context, how should they be able to sort of position themselves to sort of leverage companies such as yours?
Okay, that's a very good question. I think if we are talking about the reality of where we are, I think that's the thing. The good thing about being someone who's got many years in experience both in Africa and outside of Africa is just being able to articulate the reality of where we are. The reason most of our entrepreneurs are listening to us right now is because they're probably looking for funding. That's the truth. The reason they probably come to Aga Khan or any of the other programs is they're looking for money. But what our young entrepreneurs need to understand is that for every dollar that they're asking for, there are 50 other people asking for the same dollar in many other places in the world. So I am a firm believer that we need to start researching better. We need to start traveling. We need to start doing the things that will enable us to tell a better story. So the kids in Manila, the kids in Bogota, the kids in Japan are all working really hard to provide a good product and to provide a profit for somebody. So when we come to someone and say, I want your money so that I can build this product, we need to realize that there are other people who are coming to that same individual and saying that. So we need to realize that we have to provide our solution and a product and delivery at a global competency. And I think that's, once we realize that, then it becomes a lot easier to tell our story. And then you start packaging your company in a way that looks like any company that I would be looking at in any one of these other places in the world. So young entrepreneurs, I'm encouraging you to start doing more research, period. Like, we need to quit waiting for other people to tell us how to build these companies. We have the genius. We are not, dumb people. We have the genius within us. We need to start getting really good partnerships. We need to start solving for the future. We need to have research that makes sense. And we also, like you were talking about storytelling, I think we need to be able to tell a good story. You know, some of the best storytellers in Africa are people like Elon Musk, who was born in South Africa. And right now, within a very short period of time, was able to kick NASA, which employs the smartest people in the world traditionally were employed by NASA. But within a period of 6 years, he was able to get a rocket to outer space faster, cheaper, and more efficiently than the smartest people. So we actually can figure stuff out, but we need to quit, having this Saidia Maskini mentality. I know we are poor, but that is not, we need to provide a better product, not ask for a handout, if that makes sense.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, given the Kenyan context, and Kenya has been listed as this vibrant, dynamic, opportunity-filled environment, especially for within the tech space.
Mm-hmm.
But speaking in general, what are some of the opportunities that you, as somebody who tries to identify and invest in startups, what are some of the opportunities that you've seen are in this business environment,
yes,
that people should, that young entrepreneurs should look out for?
Yes.
And in the event that they can't find them, what are some of the tactics of trying to create even their own opportunities?
Yes.
Yeah,
Good question. So Kenya is really blessed. Actually, Africa is blessed, but Kenya sometimes, I'm myopic. I think we're more blessed than most places by the fact that our education system is a little better than some other places in Africa. We have a really, really young demographic. We have a lot of colleges, and with that, I think we are producing many tens of thousands of people who can actually start solving our own problem. I think that's an opportunity. Yes. What I hear and what I see is a lot of us are not critical thinkers, meaning I need somebody else, and this comes from our education system, unfortunately. Although it's a good education system, we still are always dependent on somebody else to tell us what to do. I think I want to see where we actually start asking those. So I woke up today in the morning, what can I do to solve this problem, instead of having somebody else to tell me how to solve that problem. If we always wait for somebody else to tell us how to solve the problem, with our GDP, with our debt, with our transport, with our infrastructure, with our health, then those same people want to make a profit. So we will wake up in a day that we don't own anything because we expected somebody else to do it. So if you look at the roads that we are building, most of them are not being built by Kenyan builders, the big ones, But Romans have been building roads for 2,000 years. It's not rocket science to put a road down, So if we figure out how to be more creative and research more, I think we have the opportunity to actually conquer that particular aspect. Now, to your question, sometimes the reality, like we're talking about, is maybe, the Chinese person has the billions of dollars that it takes to put that road. So the golden rule is the guy with the gold makes the rules, so we lose to that thing. So we need to change some of these rules somehow, right? I think a big part of it is trying to figure out, if we know who our high net worth individuals are, how do we start convincing them to spend less money in more chambers and buildings and start supporting our entrepreneurs? So we have the ability to tap into some of these circles and not always expect for the resources to come from outside. Mm-hmm. Another thing that I'm seeing, which is really encouraging, is a lot of our young people work for global companies, whether it's banks here or internationally, the people who've gone to schools in other places. A lot of us are coming back, so we no longer have to wait for somebody out there to kind of give us the strategy, the finance, so we've had the exposure to be able to solve around some of these issues. And finally, it's just kind of like going out there and doing it. As a business person, anytime I start a business, including the one that I'm running right now, there are generally very few people who are like, okay, go, or you're gonna succeed, or maybe my mom. but once you start having some traction, then people start supporting you.
Okay.
So if you have an idea on paper, go out there and start executing on that idea. Start providing somebody with research. Start providing somebody with validation. Start iterating and proving and pivoting yourself. Because most ideas that you start, will change in some way or form. I think that's what we need to do.
When I was speaking to you before this live session started, you mentioned something about you'd actually want to see many startups fail fast.
Yes.
So that, briefly just expand on that, sorry I can't complete.
I think we need to fail very fast. We need to fail often for two reasons. I lost a company during the recession in the United States. And I can't remember any time when somebody says, this is what to do during a recession, right? You had to learn through that situation, right? So through failure, you learn things that no college, no Deloitte or KPMG will ever teach you. Failing sometimes is some of the best lessons that you ever learn, trial by fire. But even more, from where I stand, I think the reason more companies need to fail is so that we can release some of the resources in this company. If a company has raised $5 million and they absolutely should fail, they don't need to be raising more money. They need to fail so that the other $5 million they were gonna raise goes to a company that actually can succeed. But even more, remember, in resources in Africa, most of these companies are employing some of the best CFOs, CTOs, HR people. If that company fails, we can able to farm this really good talent that has done this before to other companies that actually do need that help. So yes, Mr. Entrepreneur, if you're failing and there's no, gut feeling is that I'm not telling you that, you don't try as hard as possible, but if you have a dud of a product, pivot, iterate, close up shop, start something else. And the best founders usually found something else and something else. That's the way they just, so sometimes it takes for company number one not to work, for company number two to do really, really well.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting, and I like how you encourage them. Encouraging these young entrepreneurs that failure is an option, but it is a learning option.
Yes.
Now, finally, you called yourself, you termed yourself a visionary. Let's say, give me a host of maybe 3 to 4 things that when you're looking to a company to invest in, when you're looking for a company to invest in,
yes,
what are the key criteria that you look at?
We look for. Okay. Yes, I am looking for someone to invest in. So if that's you, I'd wanna know who you are. We again, I keep talking about the reality of where we are. There are companies, let me put it this way, for Silicon Valley to do what they do right now really well, you had to have New York and Chicago produce companies like Ford and banks like JP Morgan for them to end up someday investing in companies like, Twitter. And Twitter for amazing, I've been following this company for a decade. They finally made money 10 years later, right? Africa is not there. So if you're not really making money from about day one, I don't know how many funders are gonna pump money into your idea for 10 years before. Now, if the idea is is that kind of idea. There are people who are interested in that kind of, but the first thing I want to see is what's your path to revenue, profitability, scale, and that's not a very hard question to ask. So we need to be looking at ways to have companies start figuring that out. If your company is just gonna siphon money out of the ecosystem for 10 years and we don't know whether it's gonna, I'm not sure that's, we also live in a world where tech-enabled companies are just kind of the future. Whether you're selling tires or bananas like Twiga does, and technology is how to scale. Nobody has figured out how to deliver to 1.2 billion people yet. And if we say we are going to 2.4 billion by 2050 and 4 billion by 2100, you will need to figure out how to deliver to almost 5 billion people, and if you don't have technology, you can't use donkeys and mamambogas. You just have to, get technology to work for you. But resource, as we are saying, is money and people, right? How can we put money in the right kind of companies, and who are the people behind that company? A huge thing that we are doing lately is trying to figure out whether we can partner companies with co-founders. So if it takes a year for a company to go through an acceleration program, and if they would take a co-founder, that person will add capacity that eliminates them having to be in that program for a year. I think it's a no-brainer at this point to start doing things like those. So we have research intervention in looking at things completely differently from what people are doing currently. Now, we believe there are a lot of people doing really good things. We are also huge believers in collaborations. The Aga Khan Foundation and many others are doing really good work to help entrepreneurs get somewhere. I should not be trying to reinvent what the Aga Khan Foundation is doing. I should be trying to partner up with them. So if there's something that I do right and there's something that you do right, how about we bring this? Because at the end of the day, we are all in the same deal flow and pipeline. You have many programs trying to tell you that we will bring our network to you, but the reality is the network in Kenya is the exact same network. So if we want to get more companies coming from pre-seed to seed to Series A, we all need to start working together to get there. And I think that's what I'd like to say.
Okay, maybe something that I had skipped before. What's your take on mentorship? Because I've done my own analysis, and when you ask around, people are telling you, fine, there's the money component, but then sometimes there's the mentorship aspect, which is sometimes lacking.
Yes. And
people just don't have the time to sit down and say, you know what, come under my wing, and then I'll take you through A, B, C, and D for you to get to the next level.
Yeah, I think actually that's now to people like me. Shame on us, because I see, last week I talked to an incredible individual who has done very well for herself, and there's a university that is trying to come and help entrepreneurs in her space, and I said, would you partner up with this university to help people who are trying to be you someday? And she told me no, unless they paid me. Then I realized that we are not getting it. You have Aga Khan, Bill and Melinda, Clinton, Rockefeller. You have all these people coming to try and help us, but when we get there, we're the first person to say, oh, I got here, but I want to have this air at the top by myself. I think we need to start changing that. And who changes that? We all do. So the young entrepreneurs, like we say, we know the people who should be mentoring, we need to call them out. People like me who sees people like those, I might not be able to convince them, but I should be able to tell them, listen, that's not what's right for the community. What's good for what's good for you is also what's good for the ecosystem. Okay. Yeah.
So thank you so much, Mr. Peter Ngunyi. There you have it, folks. Right from the horse's mouth. Mr. Ngunyi has been an entrepreneur for the last 12 to 15 years. Just to call them many, but as you've had it, So I hope that this series has been helpful and that will take into consideration some of the key highlights and aspects that he has brought forth. And we look forward to seeing you on Thursday, the 22nd of February, at this live scale forum at the iHub in Nairobi. So see you soon, and thank you for taking the time to listen to us. Thank you very much.
Asanteni. And if anyone wants to talk, my email address is peter@earlybird.co.ke. Asanteni.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ngunyi.
Asante.
Have a good afternoon.